Since the fall of man, a war has raged between good and evil. Over the centuries, this war has distorted the truth. Now the truth is perceived as lies, and lies acknowledged as truth. To this day, the battle continues as we investigate and debate the truth behind the history and mystery of the universe. We are Paratruth Radio.
Some stories are just stories. But what happens when the military is asked to do an in-depth study on one of those stories? Is it something that we ignore? Or can it be that many of the UFO sightings since 1947 actually hold weight?
Now Paratruth presents Project Blue Book.
How's it going, Parafans? Welcome to a brand new episode of Paratruth Radio. And my name is Justin.
And I'm Eric.
And if you don't know us by now, if you're tuning in for the very first time, welcome. We are a part of what is now called the Paratruth Radio Network, even though we only have a single show. But it's the flagship show of Paratruth Radio Network.
Yeah. We didn't have a single show, but now we do.
Right.
For various reasons.
But so brand new week, brand new episode. What's going on for the week for you? Anything exciting?
Not particularly. Classes are pretty, simple this week, homework-wise. So I'm pretty much taking a little bit of a break this week, just kind of relaxing. This is the fourth week back into school, and it's kind of getting crazy already. So it's kind of nice just having a moment to step back and take a breather. Beside that, there is some interesting different things. One thing in particular is that there is a new film competition coming up. You guys remember I had mentioned a few weeks ago, or more than a few weeks ago now, but that I did something called the 48-Hour Film Festival, in which you shoot something, shoot and edit something within 48 hours. Well, now there's another one called the 72-Hour Film Festival, but instead of having an entire crew, you only get to work with 3 people. It's only you and 2 others. You got 72 hours to do pretty much everything that a 20-person crew should be doing. So me and some of you know Lewis, who was on the show a while back, have been talking about it. Might be doing that in November. So there's something new. Another thing that's new is last weekend, the Liberty University held their Cinematic Arts Film Festival. And to my great surprise, The Revealed was actually nominated for 3 different awards. It was nominated. It was nominated for Best Actress, also for Best Sound Design, and it was also nominated for Best VFX, which, it's FX. Unfortunately, we didn't win any of them, but considering there's somewhere between 35 and 40 films and we came out in the top 3, it's pretty awesome.
Yep.
So, if anything, it kind of inspires me to keep pushing forward, look forward to the next festivals, and, of course, get into the next film project. So, yeah. What about you, man? What's going on?
Not a whole lot. After submitting the story to the Armageddon book, I haven't written anything in the past week or so. So, going to start a new project soon. So, I will keep you guys informed as soon as that happens, as well as where you can find it, if it even is findable anywhere. Findable. So yeah, a lot of great stuff coming for you guys from individual Paratruth hosts. So stay tuned for that. But this week on Paratruth Radio, we had a new subject for you guys. As we announced last week, it's about Project Blue Book. And this is another one that was brought up by Eric, so I'm going to let Eric take the mic and tell you guys a little bit. Tell you guys a little bit about it.
Well, all right. So Project Blue Book, you know, it actually came to my attention about a month ago. I think it was about a month ago. I think there was a specific video released online, and a friend of ours released it or shared it on Facebook, and that's where I came across it. And it turned out that a few of my other friends also, you know, who are into the paranormal, came across the same video. And it's a video that is called Alien Interview, Secrets of Universe Revealed, Project Blue Book. It's basically a video of an alien being interviewed by an undisclosed individual in an undisclosed area because everything is black and there's a single light on the alien. It's kind of your typical movie look when it comes to I don't want to say interview. There's another term for it.
Interrogation. Interrogation,
yes. That's basically what it is. It's an interrogation. And this video, I have to admit, looks pretty interesting. The footage I was a little skeptical about to begin with, just the way the alien looks, the clarity of the alien, considering that this particular interview took place in 1964. The video feed is awfully darn good. Also, just the way the mouth of the alien moved and the breathing of the alien, so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I wasn't sure about the actual interview. The words being, you know, shared back and forth. It just seemed, I don't know, as a Christian, it seemed way off, you know, obviously. Just because it talks about basically that there not being a God and that this alien is an advancement of the human race, an evolutionary advancement, and so on and so forth. And it's just like, well, something doesn't seem right here. Now, some of my buddies thought that maybe the footage itself is fake, but that the audio is real. And so that someone just came across the audio, decided to create something with some video and put the two together. Real audio, fake video. Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, that's possible. You know, I could see that. However, I decided to do a little digging, do a little research. As you guys know, we in the paranormal community, at least for Justin and I, are really into trying to debunk things. We won't say that something is what it is until we know whether or not it is what it is.
Even if we can't prove it, all it is weird. It's not just because you can't prove that it's not, or that it's, if you can't prove that it's fake, that still doesn't mean that it's real. It's just weird and unproven until you get some type of knowledge of those videos, of a particular picture, anything that you're doing research on. Until you get all of that knowledge and can say absolutely yes or no, unproven is still weird and unexplained, but is it still evidence? No. It's just one of those weird things that somebody came across.
Right. And so, with that said, like I started doing some research. Folks, you got to do research when you're looking into these things. There's a couple things that right off the bat threw me. As I had mentioned, it was the clarity of the footage. Mm-hmm. The way the alien's mouth moved when it spoke, the words didn't mesh quite right. Especially because the alien didn't seem to have lips, so some of the words he pronounced couldn't have been pronounced. And then also the actual audio just seemed a little too clear for 1964. I could be wrong on that, but it seemed a little too clear when matched up to other audio. Now, this is supposedly a government facility, so they can have a much better audio system, et cetera, et cetera. Fine. I'm willing to let that go. However, what really got me is when I went to the YouTube channel, I noticed that it was uploaded by a YouTube user by the name of Many Things. So I decided to do some research into Many Things. I clicked on the user, ended up finding a bunch of other videos that are related to aliens, UFOs, extraterrestrial type stuff. Well, I ended up finding some videos that seemed to sync along with this one. The first one that I had noticed took place like June 6th, 1964. Looks super animated, clearly animated, no question about it. Then this one in June 9th was the last one. There may have been another one. I didn't see anything else. But nonetheless, I found Many Things website. And I said, you know what, Eric? Let's go take a look at their website. Let's see if my thoughts are true. And sure enough, folks, for those of you who thought that this alien interview that was brought on by Project Blue Book, for those of you who thought it was real, well, I'd like to tell you who published it. It was published by Many Things. They are a feature production company, a full featured production company that supports the original animated and live action work of a specific director, I'm not going to give out names, which includes feature films, TV spots, music videos, and visual effects. They were founded in 2000. That in and of itself clarifies a ton. It's a production company. And when you look at some of the other things they've done, they're really into animations, and it's not a legitimate source for, something that's supposedly was made up by produced by the government and then released. So
I do have to say it was a pretty good video.
It was a good video. It absolutely was. But nonetheless, it is a fake video. So for those of you out there who are scared or think it's awesome that there's an alien,
no, it's real. It's still real. A video.
Well, you know what I mean. But those of you who think the alien interview was real, I'd hate to burst your bubble, but no, it's not. It's a fake. So keep on looking, folks. Maybe one day you'll get your real alien. Today's not that day. But that brought up this whole thing about Project Blue Book, because it actually is a very interesting topic when I started looking into it. Mm-hmm. Project Blue Book was basically started after the 1947 Roswell incident. Now, we all know about the 1947 Roswell thing. Kind of a big deal, especially in the UFO culture.
Even today.
It really is. It's I consider it the movement of ufologists, or in that field.
It's what sparked there might have been some kind of interest in it prior to this crash, because people were seeing stuff falling out of the sky, or what they thought was a UFO, but it was really a meteorite, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I think this is what kind of started a huge movement into research of not just UFOs, but extraterrestrials.
Right, absolutely. So the first thing that I would like to just point out that there were actually other projects in the works as of 1947. The first one was called Project Sign. Mm-hmm. And then the second one was in 1949 called Project Grudge. So, after signing Grudge, the United States Air Force was, pushed by the CIA to start up a new project, and the project was called Project Blue Book. And
CIA that pushing projects? No,
never. Yeah. So it started in 1952 and ended around 1969. Ultimately, a lot of the stuff wasn't released until 1970, but it didn't have full declassification until 1979. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, when I say declassification, it's kind of cool because you can actually go onto the archives, the U.S. government archives, and look at all of the reports that Project Blue Book had taken in. And by the way, it's a lot of reports. 12,618 total. So if you guys are bored, you can go to the, archives or the U.S. government archives and check it out. But
actually, Project Blue Book has its own website now.
Yeah, I believe it. But if it's not a .gov, I don't know how true we can believe. How true some of that stuff is. Project Blue Book began around 1962. It actually began exactly like around 1952. I'm sorry, began around 1951, but the transition, before everything came together, was 1952. It was headquartered at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which Justin and I both know pretty well.
Yeah,
it's in Ohio,
in our backyard.
Folks. Yeah, it's in our backyard. Also happens to be the place that supposedly they took the UFO from the 1947 Roswell crash eventually. Now, there were a whole lot of sightings in 1952, and because of it, President Harry S. Truman, actually feared an outbreak of hysteria over the issue. And that's why in 1953, as I had said, the CIA responded by assembling an expert of scientists that were headed by a physicist by the name of H.P. Robertson of the California Institute of Technology to discuss the entire issue of the UFO. And some of this info that we're giving you is from a number of different sites. So the particular information I'm giving you guys right now is from history.com. So if you guys want to check it out for yourself, you can. There's a bunch of info on there. But yeah, as we're going through, we'll just tell you where some of our sources are coming from, just so you don't think we're just that brilliant. We're coming up and making this stuff off the top of our head. We're not.
And the links will be in the show notes as well, guys. If you want to look at any of these websites that we came across, just look at the show notes. They'll be right there for you.
Right. Well, so this Robertson panel, which is what they called it, the Robertson panel, ended up meeting for about 3 days. And during that time, they interviewed military officers and, of course, different Blue Book officials and reviewed different videos and photos of these supposed UFOs. Well, in the end, they ended up coming across their or extending their hypothesis that the UFOs really didn't pose any security threat whatsoever to the United States. And they found that about 90% of the sightings, according to the Robertson panel, could be attributed to either astrological or meteorological activity or to man-made things like balloons or searchlights, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that's only 90%, which means what happens to the other 10%? Well, that other 10% is considered unidentified. They have no means of explaining what it is. They're not going to say it's alien or that it's extraterrestrial. They're also not going to say that it was man-made. It's simply up in the air. We don't know. So that's really up to you guys. You know, I know a lot of you out there are going to be like, oh, then it must be aliens, but not necessarily.
It's just unexplained.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't call them unexplained flying objects because they're alien technology. That they're just unidentified. They don't know what it is. They can't identify what it is, so it's an unidentified flying object. Doesn't mean extraterrestrials are flying around in saucers being like, hey, what up, government? Glad you're watching. Nothing like that.
Right. But yeah, so Project Blue Book compiled reports of around 12,618 UFO sightings or different related events. Of the 12,618, as I mentioned, there 90% of those were identified. The other 10% was actually a total of 700 incidents. That's a lot, for 10%. But they remain unidentified even to this day. And then in 1966, there was a request by the Air Force that another committee look at 59 other UFO sightings, which was also investigated by Project Blue Book. So the Air Force requested that in 1966, Air Force requested another committee to look at 59 other UFO sightings by Project Blue Book. All right. It was headed by Dr. Edward Condon, and it was based at the University of Colorado. Now, after their examination of the reports, the sightings, they decided to tell the Air Force to stop investigations into UFO-related incidents because they found absolutely no unusual activity whatsoever. So here we are today.
Which is odd when they found some that were unexplained, but that's not unusual that they can't explain what it is.
Right. Well, it's interesting because how many things do we look at on a daily basis and we can't always explain the things that we see or the things that we hear. I know it sounds weird, but there's a lot of things that we notice that's just unexplainable throughout the day.
Yeah.
Such as just how exactly does the Earth and everything else remain so close to each other without breaking, or without colliding together or separating or so on and so forth. And I know there's scientific explanation to it all, but in the end, it's like how? Just how? Yeah, you can say gravity does this and does that and blah, 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 but how? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense.
I got one explanation.
What's that?
God did it.
That is probably the best explanation I've ever heard it.
I mean, you can explain to me scientifically until you're blue in the face. I'm still not going to understand what the V equals M times.
Exactly. Guys, I've got a bachelor's in cinematic arts. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I don't care about your science. I mean, I think science is cool, but come on.
Yeah. So God did it is just kind of the easy answer for me.
Yeah, for real. So, as I was looking through some of these things, I tried finding a number of different studies. I had trouble finding actual studies or not studies.
Reports?
Reports, yeah, different reports. I had trouble finding reports. Did you find any?
Well, the Project Blue Book website, or somebody who had dedicated a website to, it's bluebookarchive.org. Okay. It has the entire report on there. I did not read through the entire report because I don't have enough time in the day to read 1,500 reports. But it does have... It's got 25 pages, roughly 6 pages to a page of that 25 pages. So I'm pretty sure it's all there. It could be just kind of cut up as well. But I also came across some pictures that were in the Project Blue Book on dig.com. And it's kind of interesting to see what some of these people had come across when they were doing photographs. And I'm looking down, guys, so that I can review my notes here on my phone. But there was one in 1951 with Lubbock, Texas, where it almost looks like, and they explain this in the notes, a duck V, basically. Mm-hmm. And that the way that they explained this away was it was ducks, and then lights were reflecting off of their plumes on the bottom, and at nighttime when the picture was being taken. There's one here where they tried to recreate it because it was a 14-year-old boy that had taken the picture during a sweep of sightings in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This one kind of made me chuckle because the picture is kind of distorted, and the explanation that they give is the image on the right was likely distorted due to radiation from a UFO, or because cameras in the 1950s were just never good. Not very good. So, pretty good, funny explanation there. One that they came across had some flathead screws on it, which would explain to me that no, it's not, as far as we know, an extraterrestrial type of UFO. But they did say that it does match bombs or warheads from missiles back in the 1962. Let's see here. There was one in Omaha, Nebraska, where it's a flash of light going across the sky, almost like looks like a meteorite is falling. Okay. There's one in Santa Ana, California, that there's something hovering, but they figured out that the photos were a hoax. 1951 in New Zealand, they took a picture of what we now know as a lenticular cloud, but back in 1950, as this little caption says, if you saw that in 1950 with the scare of UFOs everywhere, you're going to think, holy crap, there's a UFO up there, so we're going to take a picture of it.
Right.
A couple of other interesting ones. Another one that kind of got me laughing was December 27th, 1954, Bronx, New York. And after I looked at the picture and then read the caption, it kind of makes a little sense what this guy is saying. It says, it does look a bit like someone hung their toy submarine from a string and took a picture of it. but we can't tell for sure. And if you look at it, it almost looks like a submarine that is flying through the sky. So some interesting pictures for sure as well. Before we go any further, I think we're going to take our first break here, folks. You are listening to Paratruth Radio right here on the Paratruth Radio Network. We will be right back after Eric's random fact of the day.
Now, Eric's random fact of the day.
Did you know that the first electric traffic signal was installed in my hometown? According to History.com, there have been competing claims as to who was responsible for the world's first traffic signal. A device installed in London in 1868 featured semaphore arms that extended horizontally to signal stop, and at a 45-degree angle to signal caution. Then in 1912, a police officer in Salt Lake City, Utah, mounted a handmade wooden box with red and green lights on a pole, with wires attached to trolley and light wires. Inventor Garrett Morgan has prominently been given credit for having invented the traffic signal based on his T-shaped design that was patented in 1923 that was later sold to General Electric. However, it was a system that was installed in Cleveland, Ohio on August 5, 1914 that is widely regarded as the first electric traffic signal. It was designed by James Hodge, who received a patent for his municipal traffic control system in 1918. It consisted of 4 pairs of red and green lights that served as stop-and-go indicators, each mounted on a corner post. It was wired to a manually operated switch inside a control booth and was configured so that conflicting signals were impossible.
This was Eric's random fact of the day.
All right, folks, welcome back to Paratruth Radio. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric.
And we've been talking about the Project Blue Book that the U.S. Air Force did back in the 1950s up to around 1970-ish area. One thing that I was just talking about before the break here was pictures that were in the Project Blue Book document. What are your thoughts on just what I said? Do you think a lot of these could have been faked back then? Do you think it was a little bit harder back then compared to now?
Everything's like going to be harder back then than it is now. Just with the technology that we have, CGI, like the film video we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But even still, like back then, War of the Worlds, is one of the older films that had come out back then, and they still did a pretty darn good job with how it looks.
And actually, that was started as a radio broadcast that scared the crap out of people. Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's always been fakes. There's always been people who have been capable of faking these things, and just creating things to look like UFOs. People are artistic. I mean, when you look at all the old monster films or the sci-fi films, those are all done by people who actually built the products, who actually designed the UFOs and this and that. And sure, there are strings that you can see in some. Like I think of the old Twilight Zone stuff, where there's something flying and then you can see this thread, that's holding it and stuff. But still, it's pretty. They can do pretty good work. Godzilla. Think of Godzilla. There has not been a single Godzilla made in Japan that hasn't been worn by a guy. Godzilla's always been a guy in a suit. But yet they do a pretty good job making it look big and real. Mm-hmm. Everything they use, nothing's CGI. It's all models, So yeah, I think it's easier nowadays, but I think there's been plenty of incidents in which these UFOs that were documented were indeed fake. But some of them are just unexplainable. Like you said, and you can't explain the unexplainable, so we can only do so much with those.
Right. So you as far as you know, didn't come across anything on the report itself? Like, you didn't see any of the report for the Project Blue Book?
Oh. No, I didn't come across many for the reports itself. The only thing I really came across that was kind of interesting was based on the 47 Roswell crash. And I think you and I have seen this, I think, with it might be in Jesse Marcel's book. It might not be. I can't remember. It looks familiar. But in this particular, it's a snapshot of the original documentation, which is the same thing you could see on bluebookarchive.com. And also you can find snapshots basically of most, at least, of Project Blue Book on vault.fbi.gov. It's actually the FBI's website, and they have everything there for you as well. But it said in the report for the 1947 Roswell crash that the object appeared to be disc-shaped, but that the disc was hanging, or appeared to be hanging, from a balloon, which is very interesting. Now, for those of us, who know about the 1947 Roswell crash, or at least have heard about it on this show or elsewhere, the U.S. government originally came out and said that it was indeed a UFO, and then the very next day came out again and said, we were wrong, it's actually a weather balloon. Well, in the report, there is no clarification of it being an unidentified flying object. It clearly states that it was a disc connected to a balloon. And well, as it turns out, according to this particular report, the disc was actually a radar of some sort that was connected to the weather balloon. And hence, and when you look at some of the material, it makes sense to an extent. The fact that some of the material was very flimsible and pliable, et cetera, but indestructible, they say. And of course, indestructible people could be very, they could be a little overzealous when it comes to saying something's indestructible, because they just might mean it's really tough. It's tough stuff. You can't tear it by your hands. I'd imagine a weather balloon has to be pretty darn resilient to just about everything, in order to stay as high as it does in the atmosphere. So that in and of itself was really interesting to me, because everyone I've talked to regarding the Roswell incident has come out and said, I'm 100% sure it was a UFO, like an extraterrestrial vehicle, and that there were aliens found and so on and so forth. But there was no report of aliens being found, supposedly, according to the one single document that I read, and from the numerous information that I've read on Project Blue Book and on that particular case. So that I think I found really interesting, because we've been researching this now for, goodness gracious, probably 9 years, nearly 8 years, for as long as we've been doing the show. It's been 8 years, and I just now find the evidence that doesn't really support any of the views that I originally had. Instead, it kind of crushes them.
But
so a little disappointing. Yeah, go ahead.
If a person writing that particular report is told by his higher-ups, this is what you're going to put in there, you will not put in there that it was a UFO, you will not put in there that we recovered bodies, then they're going to put in there exactly what they're told to put in there.
Well, now the problem with that, though, is that this was all classified information at the time. So they would have had to, store this information somewhere, somehow. And they never planned on it being declassified. So that's something to take into consideration. I mean, you need to have some kind of documentation somewhere. It can't just be like, oh, here, we're going to keep this between you and I that there's aliens, and then no one else will ever know, because it just doesn't make sense. You're going to want to keep that information. If you don't tell anybody else and an alien's come and attack and you don't warn anyone because you're dead, so you got to hold that information somewhere. Now, I see what you're saying, though. That is a possibility. But I don't know. I just don't know if I'm necessarily fully with you on that, or that view.
And that's okay. That's the kind of whole point of our show. Well, yeah, I mean, when they spell it out to you and then you start questioning it, then all you can say is, well, now it's kind of unexplained again, because
right.
You've got the two different sides of the story. So, yeah, I'm not sure how to address that anymore because, I mean, as you said, everybody we've interviewed are saying 100%, yeah, this was a UFO as an extraterrestrial craft. There were bodies found, there were bodies removed, and I really need to get a hold of Kevin Randall because he is from the military. He does have a lot of knowledge about this and research about this, so I will have to get him on to talk about it a little bit. Not necessarily the Roswell crash, but UFOs in general. But doing research into the Project Blue Book, it kind of sparked a memory for me, and I remembered doing research on a man named Bob Lazar. Do you know who Bob Lazar is?
I can't think of who he is, but I know the name.
Okay. He worked at Area 51, and he was the one working on UFO technology, trying to decipher UFO technology from, I don't remember if it was the craft from the Roswell incident, but it was a UFO that we recovered, supposedly. A lot of people are pointing towards this guy is legit. He is 100% the one that was at Area 51 doing this research. There have been people that try to discredit him, so I'm not 100% sure if he really did do that or if it was a hallucination he had. I don't know. I haven't done all the research on it, but it was interesting to see that as far as it's proven, supposedly there was a rumor that he had died, but from all the research that I've seen, he's not dead. Somehow he just vanished into thin air. So it was kind of interesting that this particular subject sparked my memory into Bob Lazar. What else did you come across as far as, because obviously now it's common knowledge. They released it to the National Archives. Everybody can read it for themselves. Was there anything secrecy-wise that you came across? Like, why were they trying to keep this from the public right away? Obviously, first thought to me is they don't want public hysteria on their hands, but right. What else did you come across?
Well, nothing else really. That's pretty much the main logistics of it, is that they were worried about public hysteria. We know what can happen if the public goes crazy. They start rioting. They start, stealing stuff because they think they need water and food, but they're not willing to pay for it because they're in a rush and so on and so forth. People start committing suicide because they don't want to have to deal with aliens invading them. Yeah, you laugh. It's funny, but this is the kind of thing that happened when Orson Welles started, right. did his radio transmission. People were that messed up. So naturally, they decided to keep everything under wrap because you can't come out. Here's the problem with doing research, and you and I both know it because we do research on a daily basis, or at least on a weekly basis for the radio show. Some of the information you gather at one moment will change at another, and then you have to decipher between the two and decide what exactly is real and what exactly is fake. Now, if you and I did our research every day as we were discussing this stuff, we would be very we would contradict everything we say, because we'd find something that says one thing here, something else that says something else here, so on and so forth, and constantly change our minds back and forth. So naturally, doing research for Project Blue Book, they need to keep things under wraps, because if they say, there's 12,000 plus UFO sightings, and so far each and every one looks like it's an alien, well, now you got a problem. And then you come back later and say, wait, now there's 90% that aren't alien, but the other 10% we're not sure. Well, now people are like, well, now they're pulling on our leg. They're just trying to hide stuff. So, yeah, they're going to keep things a secret until they have everything set and clarified to the best of their ability before being released. And the fact that it was declassified eventually in 1979 fully kind of shows that the military and or the government is willing to at least show what the research what they find in their research. Now, couldn't some of this stuff again be manipulated? Sure, it can be. Does it clarify that these other 700 incidents were alien or not alien by nature? No, we don't know. Right now, as of today, 2016, we have no clue whether or not aliens really exist. Now, we have presidents who claim that they're going to reveal such information before they're out of office or as soon as they get into office. But those could just be a way to get to some of these, ufologists or, people in the paranormal community who are interested. I mean, let's face it, the UFO conspiracy is one of the biggest conspiracies probably in the country, if not the world. More so than Bigfoot even. Because not everyone's out in the woods, but everyone's looking up at the sky.
Right.
So,
well, something that kind of falls into that, I came across this article. I didn't get a chance to do research on it, but it was basically saying NASA has come out saying, yes, extraterrestrials are real. Whoops. We thought you guys knew that, so we didn't say anything. I don't know if it's a true article. I did not get a chance to research it before the show this week, but it was kind of interesting because it's like, yeah, there's aliens out there, but with all the hype about it, we just thought everybody knew. Sorry. So it was a weird article.
Sounds like it. But, in that case, let me bring this up. When Neil Armstrong went to the moon, and I know, folks, some of you out there don't believe he went to the moon.
And we talked about this last week.
We talked about it last week. I do believe it. But when he was out there, and the number of other astronauts that have gone out there, technically, they're Martians. Technically speaking. They're also could be considered extraterrestrial because they're outside of Earth. So what exactly is an extraterrestrial? What exactly is an alien? What exactly is a Martian? Now, obviously, we have a very specific description and definition of what that is based on our own conceptions, which have been kind of thrown at us through the media, whether it be radio or television or movies. Mm-hmm. But would we have come up with that on our own? Now, some of you will say, yeah, because in archaeological sites, there have been writings, hieroglyphs, et cetera, that prove that there have been some kind of ancient alien race that have come down and talked to those people. But, again, these are just hieroglyphs and certain writings. We don't have physical proof whatsoever. These people, mind you, there are many tribes around the country, tribes, people groups, et cetera, whose religion is practiced while smoking or drinking things that will cause delusions. So, some of these writings could simply be a matter of the mind that people are seeing due to an alcohol or a drug-related substance that is in their body, and therefore not really seeing aliens whatsoever. It's just their mind making up these aliens or these beings. So, these are things that you have to put forward and not solely rely on the writings themselves, but start to do the research and understand the people group itself before moving into a deeper conclusion as to what these writings mean. So, I don't know. That's just something I'm throwing out there. It's something you got to be, specifically, I guess, vigilant of.
Well, I agree in the extent that do the research before you come to your own conclusion. What was happening to these people during their religious walks or whatever? They could have been hallucinating. They could have been visited by aliens. We weren't alive back then. We don't know for sure. Do I believe in the whole ancient aliens theory? Yes and no, to an extent. I can see where people are coming from, but I don't, without any evidence, as you were saying, that like the technology that we supposedly had and then lost and all this came from extraterrestrials, there's no proof because none of that technology is, or a lot of that technology is not around anymore. So where did it go? Nobody knows. It's just gone.
All right, folks, we're going to take our second and last break of the evening. You are listening to Paratruth Radio, and we are talking about Project Blue Book. We'll be right back for more discussion after Justin's paranormal headlines.
And now, Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
How's it going, Parafans? Justin here with your paranormal headlines, and these headlines are from alteredimensions.net. 6% of world's total inventory of aluminum found hidden under tarps in remote Mexican desert. A California businessman suspected something was awry, so he hired a private pilot to fly over a factory in a remote desert near the Mexican town of San Jose Iturbide. What he found was startling. Nearly 1 million metric tons of aluminum stacked in some cases several stories high and covered with tarp and bales of hay. The cache is heavily guarded and the property surrounded by high walls and razor wire fencing. The aluminum on the site represents about 6% of the world's total aluminum inventory and is estimated to be worth over $2 billion. The cache is suspected to be owned by one of China's richest men, Liu Zongtian, billionaire owner of China Zhongwang Holdings. It is believed that Zongtian routed the aluminum through Mexico in order to avoid U.S. trade tariffs. There is enough aluminum in the cache to make 2.2 million Ford F-150 pickup trucks. Others believe he may have been trying to corner the market by hoarding the world's aluminum supply. Zongtian claims he knows nothing about the desert cache of aluminum. Has Russia's Vladimir Putin or presidential opponent Donald Trump secretly poisoned Hillary Clinton? Given Hillary Clinton's apparent ill health through the latter half of her campaign, one man has proposed that Clinton may have been secretly poisoned, either by Russian President Vladimir Putin or Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. The proposition sounds outlandish, except the man issuing the proposal is none other than Bennett Amelou, the notorious forensic pathologist and subject of the movie Concussion, who pummeled the NFL into submission over his discovery of chronic traumatic encephalopathy in the brains of deceased players. Skeptics thought Amelou was crazy then, too, until he proved them wrong. Yesterday, Amelou tweeted, "I must advise the Clinton campaign to perform toxicological analysis of Miss Clinton's blood. It is possible she's being poisoned." His accusation was met with skepticism until some remembered that Putin was already implicated in the poisoning death of Alexander Litvinenko in London in 2006. At that time, the Washington Post reported, although the inquiry stops short of conclusively blaming Putin, noting the opaque nature of Kremlin politics, it finds that there is strong circumstantial evidence that the Russian state was responsible for Mr. Litvinenko's death. And citing the high-stakes nature of an operation to assassinate a former KGB officer on British soil, it finds that the operation would probably not have gone ahead without Putin's direct approval. After suffering from the effects of blood clots in 1998, 2009, and again in 2012, we are quite certain Hillary Clinton has been prescribed Coumadin, a powerful blood thinner prescribed to help prevent blood clots, strokes, and heart attacks. The drug produces a long list of potential side effects including blurred vision, chest pain, confusion, dizziness, headaches, and paralysis. A laundry list of after effects that could easily mask the effects of a number of difficult-to-trace poisons. And this has been Justin with your Paranormal Headlines.
This was a segment of Paratruth Radio's Paranormal Headlines.
What's up, folks? Welcome back to Paratruth Radio. My name is Eric.
And I'm Justin.
And we were discussing Project Blue Book. This was a research project, we'll call it project, because I guess it is Project Blue
Well,
Book.
yeah, you would think.
But it was an endeavor of the United States Air Force. Those of you who have tuned in this week and listened, I hope you have gotten a lot of information because we share a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there in regards to Project Blue Book. We debunked a couple of things. We had a little friendly
Debate.
Yes, I guess that's the word to use about it. But nonetheless, in the end, it's really up to you guys. I mean, do the research yourselves. There's plenty on Project Blue Book. You could check out some of the sources that we had mentioned. Again, some of these sources will be available to you at our website.
In the show notes.
Yeah, in the show notes. So check it out. A lot of this stuff is .org, so it's not Wikipedia. Right. Although Wikipedia technically is a .org, but
Wikipedia compared to these other sites, anybody can go in there.
Right? But we got bluebookarchive.org. That's basically the website dedicated to Project Blue Book. We've also got archives.gov. We got vault.fbi.gov. We got history.com, et cetera, et cetera. There's a ton of stuff out there. Some of these things are actually put up by the FBI, as I had mentioned, FBI.gov. So check it out, guys. It's up to you to kind of do your own research. We can only give you so much information, but we can't actually make up your mind for you.
Right.
So, after listening to the show, fill us in on what you think. What are your thoughts about this whole thing? Are extraterrestrials real? Do you believe that
in
the
magic?
Results... Yeah, in magic. Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in the end results of Project Blue Book and some of the things that we come across, and the fact that there are indeed 90% of the sightings for UFOs to have been debunked? And if so, do you think that's real or true? And what about the other 10%? Do you think those are fully unidentifiable, or do you think it is proof of alien life, the fact that they are unidentifiable? Please, folks, though, I mean, in this case, if you're going to comment on some of these things, send us your proof as well.
Right.
Because we're research-based. So send us your proof as well. If you do truly believe that aliens are real, send us what proof you have of those aliens. And of course, obviously, if you just believe that aliens are real, that's fine. You can let us know that too.
Right, but don't give us a bunch of information and then not tell us where you're quoting it from or where you got it from, because then all it is your opinion, really. If you cannot back it up with any information, which we have finally started doing for you guys, providing the websites that we're using for our research. If you can't do that, then all people are going to say is, well, that's your opinion. You're allowed to your opinion. You can't show me any proof. Blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. One thing I wanted to comment on is I wonder where the government comes up with their project names.
I don't know.
First one was Sign or Signs. Which one was it? Sign?
The first one was Sign.
And then the next one was Grudge. I'm like, right. So they saw the sign, then they had a grudge because they saw the sign, and then they came up with Blue Book. There's no synchronicity between the names, so it's kind of interesting.
I think it's part of another project that they have ongoing since the early days called Project Give Project Names. And in that project, they do research to figure out exactly what the best name is for a particular project. We have yet to declassify that information, but that's just something I'm throwing out there as a hunch.
Well, at least with hurricanes, tropical storms, they use human names.
Right.
But interesting stuff. I mean, I guess I can look at it from this perspective that they kept it a secret to not create mass hysteria, which in a sense does create even more problems, because then they're keeping stuff from the public, so the public is like, they're keeping stuff from us. What else are they not telling us?
Right.
So, but like this compared to the MK Ultra project that the CIA conducted, at least this was, even though done in secret, they were just following up on cases that were based on UFO sightings, not drugging people without them knowing and then them completely having a psychological breakdown.
Right.
So,
well, and one thing I do want to mention, though, too, because I think a lot of people are confused, that based on Project Blue Book, I think people had this misinterpretation based on that video that came out a couple of months ago. But on other
with
things
the alien, you mean?
Yeah, with the alien. That the Air Force actually conducted interviews with alien species. But that wasn't the point of Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was simply based on the unidentified flying objects, not based on the personnel of those objects. So,
and these were based on sightings. It wasn't even
based on sightings. It wasn't even actually based on their own.
Yeah, right.
Whatever if they captured anything or whatever. This is just based on eyewitness accounts mostly, or reports that were done by government officials or military officials, so on and so forth. So that's something to keep in mind. So when you do come across something that says Project Blue Book and there's an alien involved, I would question it. But
so one check for the U.S. government. But yeah, that's about all we got for Project Blue Book, guys. As Eric said, I do encourage you guys to do the research before you come to your final conclusion. We will provide you with the research that we came across. There's tons more out there. You have to weed through the false reports and everything else to kind of get to it. I'll even provide a link to the video that we're talking about, because if you guys have not seen it, it's actually a really interesting video. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys' thoughts are. Again, if you want to contact us, put it in the comments on YouTube or on Spreaker. Find us on Facebook, Twitter. As Eric said last week, just Google Paratruth Radio. You will find us. And we would love to hear from you guys. As I said last week, if you want a shout out from us on the show, if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have ideas, let us know what you guys are thinking you want to hear. So, any final thoughts before we head out for the evening?
No, I think I'm good. I've cleared my entire conscience.
All right, so next week, guys, I have not told Eric about this, but we will be having on BJ Hodges and a couple of his team members from the group Bluegrass Ghost Chasers. We actually met them last year at Scarefest. We met BJ at Scarefest. So we'll be having them on to talk about their investigations and what have you. And again, guys, ghosts. So be happy that we're bringing you ghosts. Well, no, let me rephrase that. Stories about ghosts. I don't want to be accused of, you guys brought a ghost in my house. How dare you?
Is that how they all talk? Is that how our listeners talk?
Most of them.
It's okay.
No, just the women. Now I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail. So on that note, folks, until next week, where you'll see us, same time, same channel. My name is Justin.
And I'm Eric. Peace.
If you enjoyed this episode of Paratruth Radio, and you would like to listen to it again, or are interested in listening to any of our past episodes, then you can listen to them on HD at our website, paratruthradio.com.
And you can also find us at Stitcher, Blueberry, TuneIn, iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube.
And of course, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter for brand new updates of our show every day.